Hi everyone and welcome back to the garden, and as you can probably tell by the state of my face, it's been a really hot day here, and even now as I'm filming this it's still around 29 degrees. It's absolutely roasting, but I suppose I shouldn't complain really, because it's been one of the first summer days where we've had real heat and had blue skies all day long, which is fantastic both for enjoying the gardening and for the plants actually to start growing in. And looking back, it's been quite a while since I actually did a garden tour video. I've done a lot of instructional videos, how to grow different plants in the garden, how to create certain tropical effects, but it's been a while since I actually took you around the garden. And it was actually around December, January time when I filmed the last one, and the garden was a very different place back then. It was muddy, the plants weren't growing, and it looked a bit of a mess really. There's still parts of it that do look a mess, but a lot's changed since then. If you don't already subscribe to my channel and you haven't seen my other videos, then we actually moved here in August last year. August 2020, after about 5 months of waiting to move finally, I dug up all the plants in the old garden, and the move itself was carried out on a day like this. It was around 30 degrees, absolutely sweltering, and we pretty much moved a full-on jungle of plants. I've got all kinds of palm trees, bananas, bamboos, some of them in absolutely massive pots, and they all needed to be moved here, along with all kinds of different stone and cobbles. It was an absolutely manic week and one I'd never want to do again, but I had all the ingredients to create an exotic jungle garden. However, after a couple of months of really good progress and getting some plants in the ground, winter came. And the first couple of months of winter, I don't know if you remember, but we had really persistent rain pretty much every single day. And eventually the garden just got that muddy, I couldn't move plants up and down it. So I couldn't do anything until just after Christmas time. And just as it started to dry out, the cold came. And it wasn't the coldest winter we've ever had, but it was more the duration of cold and the amount of frost that really made it tricky. A lot of the exotics, well, pretty much everything has survived, but it definitely doesn't make for good growing conditions, and a lot of the tender tropical plants couldn't be planted out until June this year. So in reality, everything's around a month behind, but now we've got some heat, things are finally starting to catch up. And before I take you around the garden and give you a quick tour of the progress, I'd just like to say the garden definitely isn't finished. Obviously no garden's technically finished, but this one certainly isn't. And what I've concentrated on is the middle area, from around just before the brick shed until around the last 15 metres of the garden, which is a fire pit project. I realised around May time there was no way I was going to be able to complete everything, so I thought I'd focus my efforts on the middle section and create a great jungle environment this year. So this is year one from a blank canvas. I think I've succeeded in that. And on the plus side, I've still got projects to continue for the rest of this year and probably most of next year as well. But I'm really excited to share you exactly what I've done so far. So let's start off small then. And this is the tropical shade border that I put together around May time. And already you can see it's really starting to knit together. I love the mixture of colours, the persicaria there, purple fantasy, the heucheras are starting to flower, the fatsias and the trachycarpus there are already starting to grow. I'm really excited to see it evolve over time, and I think it looks fantastic against this stone wall, which I definitely made myself. It's got a spider plant in there, I really tried to green it up a bit. And on the top, there's lots of succulents, the sedums and different kinds of sempervivums that really appreciate the hot, dry conditions. Standing back a bit, you'll see a massive granite rock that I'm yet to move. Now the garden's actually drying out a bit though, it should be a lot easier. It's still around 1/3 of a tonne though, so certainly a project. And the first tall plant you'll see is actually a raspberry. This was in the garden originally, it made some lovely crumbles last year, so we've definitely decided to keep it in. But I put a tree fern alongside it, nasturtiums there around the ground, and at the back, there's a Tetrapanax and persicaria that will fill out, and definitely the Tetrapanax will grow up over time and really give it that exotic canopy. But heading on through the garden, and this is the main view. You'll see there my tree fern's pride of place, but looking at this border here in a bit more detail, I've tried some things haven't worked, other things have, but you'll see there, Tetrapanax, that's a Trachycarpus princeps hybrid, there's the tree fern layer, like I said, and here is my massive Cyathea medullaris, which is a black tree fern. It definitely got hit a bit during those sort of late frosts we had, but I planted it out now and I'm definitely going to have to protect it in winter, but it's certainly worth it. One thing you might notice is just how many big plants will be in here, but the idea is to create a really impressive canopy in time and create more underplanting room for the nasturtiums. There's a Musa basjou there that's going to grow up tall as well. And I've used a lot of filler plants like the salvia there, and down here a Hemericalis daylily, which typically isn't actually flowering today, but it's got beautiful red flowers and it definitely fits in. And alongside it, Alocasia brisbaniensis, which has got these amazing sort of glossy leaves. I keep this one as a house plant over winter, but it looks fantastic planted out for summer. And it goes well with these there, basic petunias, but in a really bright red colour to add to that tropical effect. But anyway, this is what you're wanting to see. These are my main tree ferns. So as we head through past the brick shed, you'll see that the garden really narrows, and I've tried to create a lush green jungle environment here. It's quite a shady area with the trees next door, so I've really tried to plant to emphasise that and exaggerate it. So I've got this giant 8-foot tree fern there, which I grew in a pot at the old house, and that I've planted at an angle, so again it really feels like the garden's wrapping around you. I've really tried to concentrate the tree ferns in this area with all their lush greens. They look amazing in spring, but continue to look really great all year round. And looking down here, it's not just big plants, it's the small plants as well. So I've used a mixture of plants like this alocasia, which just go out for summer, along with plants like these ferns, which are evergreen and stay outside all year. And at the back, I planted sort of taller plants that will grow up over time. And these are plants that grow quickly, so I've got cordylines, I've got a multi-trunk Tetrapanax there, Rex, and here I've got a tall Scheffleras Taiwaniana. So these are all plants that size up very quickly and will help to create that sort of exotic jungle canopy. And at the front, I've got some more interesting shorter plants. So here is cannas Stuttgart, and that particular one has been pretty much eaten by some kind of bug, but it's still looking fantastic with its variegated leaves. And looking down here, there's a mixture of Dixonia there, there's a small tree fern, along with one of my favourite jungle ferns, it's Terrace umbrosa. It's absolutely fantastic. Not the hardiest fern, it does go brown after a long winter, but it soon puts these green fronds out. At the back there, that's a Fatsia japonica spider's web, which will soon size up. And there is another Schefflera, that's Rhododendrofolia. So I've got some really interesting plants grouped together. The ones at the back will hopefully grow up pretty quickly and help create a backdrop for these amazing foliage plants in front. And speaking of amazing foliage plants, this here is a Xanthodecia white giant, which even though it's a young plant, it still has leaves around 30 to 40 centimetres long. That can get to around about 2 metres tall, something like that. Absolutely incredible. At the back there, I've got a Japanese maple, which the idea is having a plant with small leaves at the back really exaggerates the effect of having large leaves in front. Well, that's the thinking anyway. And here I've got a proper mixture of plants, from some bargain basement plants at the back there. I've got a foxglove there. Here I've got a ginger, and I've got a mixture of ferns as well as spider plants, which are really common as a house plant, but personally I think they really fit in with this sort of exotic planting. I've tried to use hard landscaping like these boulders to really give the impression of age, and personally I think the ferns work absolutely great with them. They really soften the edges and add to the effect that this garden's been here a lot longer than it actually has. Next up then, we've got one of the most amazing bamboos in the garden, and if you've ever been to Treba in Cornwall, they've got a stunning specimen of this one here. And it's definitely not the hardest of bamboos. It's certainly looked rough after a few -5s and -6s this winter, but it's come good, it's come green again, and it's already sent up a couple of new culms. So I'm excited to see that one size up, and hopefully it gets bigger and to a more hardy size pretty quickly. But I think it all works fantastic this area, and on the right hand side, I've got more of a mixture of even more sort of eclectic plants. So here is a Pseudopanax, that's Trifolius or Trifoliatus, which is a really sort of bizarre looking plant with these sort of amazing thin leaves. Down there, again, more ferns, more white giants to try to keep that consistent theme going. Here is one of my favourite tree ferns. I've left the old fronds on, and they almost create like a sort of brown skirt around it. I think it looks absolutely fantastic. But zooming in here, this is one of my favourite areas of planting. So we've got plants like the Scheffleras Schwelliensis, which, although they're all the same height at the minute, that's going to size up pretty rapidly. And here, under that tree fern there, there's a Mahonia soft caress, which again is a fantastic foliage plant. We've got Hakanakloa forest grass, Japanese forest grass at the front there, which it really adds a sort of subtlety and softness to the front of the borders. But going further back, we've got Fatsia polycarpa, which again is going to grow up pretty tall. So I'm really excited to see how this border develops over time. I was restricted with the width of this border because there's actually a path just under here. So whether it changes in the future, I don't know. But I'm excited to see how these plants grow up and how it all knits together over time. But anyway, let's head out into the jungle clearing. And on a night like this, a beautiful night where the sun's low, I think the light here is absolutely fantastic, and there's so many exotics packed into such a small area. But first off, just showing you to the right hand side, this is actually the base where my greenhouse is going to go later in the year. I actually won a greenhouse as part of a competition at the back end of last year. It won't be delivered till around September, October time, but that's a perfect spot for it. It sees plenty of sun there during the summer months, and it's just the right spot where there's a base already made for it, and it's near the shed as well. So this is a Phoenix Canariensis palm that I put on my Instagram this week. It's one that I've grown in a pot again, in a 160 litre pot for around 4 years, and now it's been planted out. So around that, I then got some blue bamboo, which is Berinda papyrifera, which is fantastic. So although you can see that brick shed at the minute, which does work really well with the Phoenix leaves, over time this will become hidden by the bamboos. I've got there my climber, Parthenocissus henriana, which is going to spread up that wall there, like a posh Virginia creeper basically, with really nice leaves. So this area is going to definitely take on more of a jungle look, whereas at the minute it almost looks a bit sparse down here, and I've used some house leeks just to fill it in. But there I've got a euphorbia, and that's my Wallamy pine. So I've really gone for interesting foliage and tried to pack as much as I can into a small area. So I'm excited to see this bit develop, and as the greenhouse goes here, that palm is definitely going to be protected from most of the winter cold, especially with the bamboos around it. North is pretty much that way, so it's definitely going to have a lot of shelter from those cold, drying winds. And here, I've got a bit of a question for you guys really. Drop me a comment below if you can think what I can plant here. Obviously it's going to be behind the greenhouse, so I won't have a lot of access to this area, but I don't really know what to plant here. I have thought about putting some tall, narrow plants in. I like the yews, the fastigiate yews that grow upright. I did think about that. Then I've also thought about putting some kind of wood on that shed there, extending it across with some horizontal slats, and then growing climbers up it, because I wouldn't need to access them for maintenance, and the wood grow really well in a narrow space. So the greenhouse is going to be buttoned up to it. It's quite a narrow spot, but drop me a comment below if you've got any ideas of something that will look great in this spot here and really help to cover that fence up. But heading round, you'll see a summer display, a few of my favourite succulents. There is an agave, that's Blue Glow. Here we've got a lavender lady, which is a mangave, which is a fantastic looking plant. And there, it's a bit damaged after winter, but it's by a low either polyphylla or polyphylla, depending how posh you want to be. It's got a bit of damage on the edges, but it's already started to grow through it. And these are an amazing spiral plant. Next to our bargain basement water feature, which is missing a few bits, so it was cheap, but we've got it working. When I say we, definitely me. But it looks all right here for now. I'll have a juggle around when the greenhouse comes. And looking here, I try to use a few more potted plants, the citrus, more agaves, and at the back there, I've got another Cypher tree fern. This one is Cythia brownii, which is the biggest tree fern in the world, or one of the biggest anyway, but unfortunately it's not hardy. So that one is a bit of a decision. Do I put it in a larger pot, or do I risk planting it out and have to protect it every single winter? We'll see. But around it, I've got more bananas in pots. That's a Musa Basju there, another one there. There's an Abutilon Thomsonii there, which I love the sort of foliage on. And there is my dwarf Cavendish. So I've tried to make the area look good, and it's an example of how you can use pots to quickly transform an area, or something where you've got extra plans for it in future and you just want it to look great right now. But anyway, just backing up to that entrance to the jungle clearing again, I thought I'd show you down here. There's a lovely Begonia luxurians. I really want a large one of those, so I planted a small one there. Hopefully it'll grow a lot with this sort of summer heat, but also with the shade from these tree ferns. And there at the back, you'll see what is probably my most Instagram plant during the winter months. It's a Trachycarpus princeps hybrid. And if you can see that leaf, if I can walk in front of it, you'll see there just how silvery blue it is. It's an amazing looking leaf. But from the steely silver of the Trachycarpus, we go on to the Ensete. And I posted a picture earlier today. These leaves look absolutely incredible with the sun behind them. You can see all the oranges, the reds, look absolutely fantastic and such a contrast. And I've tried to pair that with Salvia amistad to really sort of bring those lush, rich colours. And even though it's the first year of growing this bit, I think it really works. I'm happy with the combo with that and that, so they'll stay for future years. But there's some bits that I might change. So looking down here, there's a Brugmansia. It doesn't get enough sun down here. Something's tried to eat it as well, so that is something that I might change and move around for next year. But the great thing about growing these tropical plants is that you can change your display every year. Looking further back, we've got a Fargesia there, that's Angustissima, which is a fantastic bamboo, really narrow at the base, but it's a good strong grower, so I'm really looking forward to that, sizing up, and that again will create a nice backdrop to these flowering plants in front. But, growing up here, that is a tree fern that I planted earlier this year. The new trunk, one of the few big plants I've actually bought this year, but it's already put out some amazing fronds this year, and it's only going to look better and better, hopefully anyway. And there you'll see a Trachycarpus nova, which isn't the tidiest looking palm, but once it's settled in, it's definitely the fastest growing Trachycarpus. They're an amazing plant, and here there's plenty of room for it to size up underneath this massive cherry tree. So this is what you probably can't see in a lot of my videos. This part of the garden, a lot of the garden is really shaded, and that definitely affects how big some plants grow, the real tropicals, and how early they start growing in the year. This definitely casts a lot of shade, but on the plus side, that amazing trunk covered in ivy is a perfect backdrop to a lot of my tropical and exotic planting. But heading off to the right hand side, you'll see I've got quite a mixed border here. And originally, I planted out in May an Ensete Montbaliardii, which is a really tall banana plant. And unfortunately, I think this was due to the long winter, it was inside too long, it rotted away. So I've replaced it with this here, which is a canna musifolia. And behind that, I've got all kinds of different cannas, salvias there. There's an amaranthus, which have this really nice sort of tropical flower, even though they're annuals, you can grow them every year. But going back, we've gone for more purple plants in this area. So you've got the ricinus there, which are slowly sizing up. They'll really start to grow rapidly now it's getting warmer. At the back there, Persicaria, that's looking fantastic. I have got taller plants at the back again, such as that Scheffleras taiwaniana, but I've really gone for dark plants at this end. And you could say it's part of a fancy colour scheme, whereby the garden gets lighter and brighter as you go that way, or you could just say it's some random idea I had that I stuck with, so I'm trying to justify it. But either way, I quite like all the purple plants together, and in this middle section, things go a bit more green. So I've got there, Scheffleras macrophylla with those really big leaves. Around it, I've got some Jurassic ferns, Dryopteris wallichinia, something like that anyway, butcher the pronunciation. And at the back there, really small, I've got a Tetrapanax latus, which is a fantastic looking plant with really glossy green leaves. But anyway, you only really notice these plants when you've been in this area for a few minutes. The first thing you notice is actually behind me. And no, it's not this ginger plant here, it's the Gunnera, which now you can see in all the glory, and they look absolutely incredible. These are all plants that were planted out last September time, and you can see just how big they've got. I had this one plant in the middle. This was a small division around 2 or 3 years ago, and then last spring when I dug it up, I made 2 further divisions. So the plants at either side have come from a tiny division with leaves that are way smaller than this one. They only really had a couple of leaves last year, but already they're absolutely massive. And I knew they were going to get big, I knew they were going to extend into this area, but just how quick they've grown has really surprised me. So to give you an idea, that tree fern at the back there is an 8-foot trunk, and you can't even see the trunk. In fact, when this leaf here grows, if it grows well despite the heat, then it's pretty much going to block the view of most of that tree fern. So they've sized up really well. And I'd love to show you all the interesting and intricate planting I put behind them all, but the reality is you can't really see a lot of it. But just zooming under here, you'll see my pink china, there's a Farfugium there, I've got hosta at the back there, Summon Substance, and I've got Rhododendron Sina Grande, I've got some more Scheffleras. So over time, there's definitely going to be that backdrop to this. The plants that I all want to grow tall, but I've had to put them in a smaller size, but hopefully they'll settle in well and grow really well. Also, the other side of it is the Gunnera's die down over winter, so they're there for some evergreen interest. But I'm really pleased with how this is going. I mean, just look at the size of that leaf. It's absolutely massive. In fact, if I had to say one plant has been my star of the show so far, it would definitely be this Gunnera. It's sized up so quickly. But from a plant that's been a roaring success, I'm now going to look at one that's been an abject failure. And that is here, this Musa Basju, which is definitely the slowest banana plant in the whole of the UK. I thought I killed it off, and it wasn't for lack of hardiness. I actually used a rug to cover it one night, it got a bit wet, and I think that rot has actually passed down the stems. So it's not dead yet, it's starting to come back, but it's definitely a bit of a hole in the garden, where if you look back, logically there should be a tall plant there, or at least in my eyes anyway. So it isn't at the minute, but I'm only telling you guys about it, keep it to yourselves. But looking back, you'll see Scheffleras taiwaniana, there's a couple of smaller Scheffleras in there, and at the back there, we've got my hydrangea. That's Bellevue, which is an absolutely fantastic hydrangea. Definitely doesn't sound like an exotic plant, but it's got these amazing big leaves, and that'll size up really nicely and help create a bit of a sort of go-between between the planting here, the lush exotic planting, and the bigger flowery foliage plants next door. So I'm looking forward to that backdrop developing over time. Here, you'll see even more tree ferns, and in the middle, one of my larger Trachycarpus, that's a Wagnerianus, or definitely a crossive one, with these stiffer leaves. It's definitely different to Fortunii. And that is going to grow up, and I definitely wanted to consider the idea of just having tree ferns in an area, but I think having that palm in the middle there, it really sort of adds to the vibe, and it's definitely a sort of exotic plant right in the middle to raise up and create some interest. Another canna musifolia, and I put lots of collocages here. So the thinking was, the soil down here was supposed to be really damp and moist. It definitely is. You can see there's a crocodile there for proof, but it's not as moist as I wanted it to be. So what I've done is I've made a little pond there for the insects and birds to drink from, and further back up this way you'll see my small wildlife pond. So that's definitely not going to help the dryness of the soil, but it certainly gives something for the wildlife to use. And looking up there, there's another tree fern, a bit of a rescue one, that one, that again I planted at a slant. And at the back, you'll see I've tried to pack in lots of really interesting foliage plants there again. All kinds of different heucheras, Scheffleras, fatsias. So it's hopefully going to sort of knit together over time and create a sort of really fantastic jungle floor. But looking back on the right hand side, you'll see this is the bright end, canna Stuttgart again. The tallest, fastest growing canna, but certainly one that you'll struggle to keep the leaves looking pristine on. And here I've got another plant, again variegated, which is actually in nasturtium. So it's a plant you can buy for £1 something for a pack of seeds, but they're a fantastic addition to a tropical garden and a great filler plant like I've used here. Because one of my biggest challenges when actually developing this garden was how much more work and how much more time it takes to create a big garden that's still got that lush tropical sort of dense jungle effect. At the old garden, like I said, I only had a small area and I really put a lot of time into developing it. So coming to a garden that's maybe 10 times the size, you definitely have to find lots of cheat sort of tricks and tips to get your way there. But I think it's well on its way to achieving it. And remember, it's still only July and it's been a very tricky year for tropicals. So they've got the best 2 months of growing still to come. Got another interesting bamboo there, and at the back I've got Fatsia spider's web, which are never going to be the stars of the show, but I think they suit the shady position behind the massive leaves of this Tetrapanax, these cannas here, and they're definitely going to help create a backdrop over time and help sort of cover that fence up. One thing I haven't mentioned that I should probably show you, this is my Roa trachycarpus. I know in theory, if you've got a jungle garden, the planting should be informal, loose, nothing in lines, but I quite like the idea of mixing formal with the informal, having it as though it's a garden that's been sort of grown over in a jungle. So there's definitely a few sort of lines, a few straight areas like this, but I like to have the loose planting either side of it to really show it off. And looking to the right here, we've got some echiums, a phormium which is flowering, and there's the first of my eucalyptus trees, which is already growing very strongly this year. And I planted quite a lot around it. As you can see there, another phormium. That was actually a Facebook Marketplace freebie. When I bought it, it had been chopped right back to there, but it's already flowering with these amazing flower heads, and it's already started growing pretty strongly, sending out these lovely strappy leaves. And behind it, one of my absolute favourite palms, which is Jubutia, and that one is Jubutia eriuspather, which is a very strong grower, very hardy, and the main reason is it just looks absolutely fantastic. You can't beat your feather palm for that real exotic vibe. And speaking of exotic vibes, you might notice my T-Rex there. He's definitely going to get painted sometime soon, but I think at the minute he really fits in with that jungle atmosphere. So yeah, stepping back a bit, you'll see the jungle clearing, the garden really opens up, and I've tried to do my best to make the most of the narrow borders on each side. And the main methods I've used are packing in a lot of plants, using a lot of different foliage types, as well as planting climbing plants like the Fatsahedra there, and the larger fatsies at the back there to really obscure the fence. So if you can cover those fences up, if you can create dense layers of planting, the garden looks a lot bigger than it is. But as we head on forwards, you'll see that the garden starts to narrow a bit. And this, in the future, is going to be my bamboo path. It's going to be more of a bamboo tunnel. But this year, because the bamboos are still filling out, I've used a lot of smaller plants around them. So what I've done, again, lots of smaller bulbs, lots of calla lilies there. Lovely yellow one there. I actually got those from one of the neighbours as a present, which is great. More cannas there. Persicaria at the back. And I've used a lot of filling plants in this area. So in future, I mean, you'll actually see looking there, that's about as far as I've got with the garden, pretty much where that back line ends there. But at the minute, this is a really lush jungle section, but in the future, this will just be a tunnel of bamboos. And what I've done, I've got my bigger vivax bamboos on this side here, which have got bamboo barrier dug in at one end. I need to put it down the back and the front, but that'll be when I can afford it. So this year, so it doesn't look so bare, I put in lots of plants. So we've got the dahlia here, I've got lots of interesting dahlias that, again, I just chose the ones that I liked. I think they all work really well in this sort of jungle garden. I've got the ricinus, which is starting to size up pretty quickly now. That's Blue Giant, one of my favourites. And this bit here was a bit more experimental, and it is my sort of vegetable area. So you'll see the lettuces are bolted. We managed to pick one and eat that. I've just left the rest to do the thing. Here, I've got lots of different marrows, courgettes, the sweetcorn at the back. They haven't grown as well as I expected because of the big tree behind them. I did wonder if that would influence things a bit, but they've certainly filled out the area, and there's definitely lots of leaves to look at. In addition to the leaves, if you look down there, you'll see my own little harvest festival starting to appear. I've got some marrows, a few more there. So they're definitely growing, they're definitely starting to do the thing. But the main reason I grew them was more of an experiment to fill the area up. And for that, they've actually done a bit too well and started to spread down this way. But I think this is an area that over time it's going to look completely different. So if you'll see on the right hand side, I've got a bamboo there, there and there. And what I've tried to do is grow clumpers on this side. You'll see there, this one's Jubutia, and already it's got beautiful sort of blue culms. It's a fantastic looking bamboo. I've tried to space them out enough so each plant's got the room to actually do its thing, but not, I still want to get the feeling of walking through a tunnel of bamboo. So I've gone for the Barindas here, a couple of the blue ones. So it's a rough thing. I've got blue ones on the left hand side, and then the right hand side I've got the golden and the green bamboos. So I think this will look fantastic as it develops, but I've really enjoyed sort of planting the sort of more tropical plants in between them this year. More Ensetes there. If you're already growing Ensete and want to make it look better, get another one planted near it. They definitely look so great in groups. And heading round this bit, to be honest with you, it's not a failure, it's just a bit sparse. And in reality, what I would have done is, at the old house, is had a lot of smaller plants growing in the front there. Obviously this edging isn't finished yet, and this bit's not actually covered over yet. But you'll see, I've got another big bamboo there, that's Tetrapanax. I put miscanthus grass at the front just to give it some height this year. I've got lots of cannas, sunflowers, with some smaller dahlias at the front there, more colocasia, eucomis bulbs. But it definitely doesn't have that sort of packed jungle feel. So to me, the really sort of missing ingredient here is just the amount of plants. But obviously putting a lot of plants needs a lot of space to grow them cheaply, or it needs a lot of money if you're going to buy them all, neither of which I've got this year. So I'm happy with how it's developing, and my long-term plan for this area here is basically for this bamboo to really do its thing. It's potentially one of the chunkiest bamboos you can grow in the UK. And at the back, you didn't really see this on the way through, but I've got more tree ferns. Behind them I've got Trachycarpus. That one took a bit of a battering. It was dug up last year, but the smaller ones either side seem to be growing strongly. Around those I've got lots of Tetrapanax, which again will grow fast up and create this canopy to help sort of link this garden with next door. More tree ferns there. And here I've got my Fargesia robusta Campbell bamboos, which is my top recommended clumping bamboo. Really easy to grow, really tough, and it's here as more of a windbreak and as a divider between this part of the garden, which does look fantastic in the light there, and the bamboo section. So I'm happy with the long-term plan for this bit, even if it hasn't really sort of got to my expectations this year. Yet anyway, I know it's still July. So just as we've seen before, the garden goes from being constricted and opens up again. And I know I could have done lots of fancy little pathways and had lots of meandering routes through the garden, but I wanted a garden that we could use, that Max could run up and down in, and it's definitely got spaces where we can enjoy it, rather than just having a proper jungle. So hopefully I've tried to create that compromise. Obviously this bit isn't finished, the grass is still visible, but the main reason for that is these rocks here. And in case it's not very obvious, these are granite and they're very, very heavy. So at the minute, we had a lot of rain the past couple of weeks and the ground is actually still boggy. It'll definitely dry out with this sun at the minute, and hopefully then I can get the pallet truck under them and get them moved up there. And you might have seen my video planting the Jubutia earlier this year. If you haven't, check it out. It's definitely a bit of a battle. And the plan was to have lots of rocks around it here, like a sort of Chatsworth House type rockery. But I've since decided that I might just put that one there and use these a bit further down the garden, because I don't want to restrict the path too much here and bring it too far in. But I've got an even better idea, hopefully, for having them around that palm there. That's the biggest palm in the garden and my next planting project for later in July. But enough about that for now. Let's look at this border here. So although it's definitely not finished, I haven't put the edging in it, I haven't put the big stone there, I'm still happy with the planting. The only exception is these sedums here, or hylotelephiums as they're now called. I use them as a filler and in reality I didn't need a filler there, and having more exposed space really shows the plants off. And what I personally find is when you're growing the big leaved exotics like your real tropical colocasias, bananas, cannas, things like that, they work really well packed in. But when it comes to spikier plants, more architectural angle plants, a bit of sort of negative space, a bit of open space really helps sort of accentuate the forms. So here we've got a volcano palm, or volcano. There's an aeonium there. The agaves will size up pretty quickly. So the plan here, really sort of long term, I might take those sedums out this year. I've got another community planting project that they might work really well in. At the back, I've got some Trachycarpus palms that'll grow up really nicely. And there we've got the foxtail lilies, which, to be honest with you, couldn't look any better than they do now in this beautiful light. The setting sun makes them look absolutely fantastic. I've got Euphorbia mellifera there, and some Trachycarpus. Those will grow up nice and tall. And at the back there, you'll see the monkey puzzle tree. That's the one, the plant that was originally in the garden. It's still survived. It's grown really well. I'm giving it plenty of water, and hopefully it'll transplant very well. But I know a lot of people express a concern about the room for it, but the reality is I've got the room for it to grow up right there, and I think the foliage works so well against this Jubutia, which, to be honest with you, is probably my favourite cold hardy palm and my favourite feather palm we can grow here in the UK. This one's probably around 20 years old. I've grown it for about 4 or 5 years. They will size up pretty quickly. Well, when I say pretty quickly, they're a very slow growing palm, but once they get to this size, they seem to grow and grow and grow, and these leaves will eventually get over my head height, so I'm really looking forward to seeing it. Some interesting bits and pieces. I've got the fascicularia bromeliad there. I've got some echiums planted there, which hopefully might make it through, and I've got an aloe there, which is aloe striatula or striatula, which is a cold hardy aloe, fantastic thing. The alliums at the back there, they've just finished now, I need to chop those off. Globe Master, got fantastic flower heads on them. And there is another Tetrapanax, which is a weird looking plant. So I've tried to group a lot of sort of weird foliage together. And at the back there, I've got a few more palms packed in. But heading round then, and here is another Jubutia. So this is like a sort of desert island style bed. It's raised up, that's better for the plants, and I really like the look of it. Dotted around it again, more aeoniums. That one doesn't seem to like the sun, so I might chop it off and use it for cuttings. But I've also got some montanas, and these, if you saw my video, agave montanas, I think they're the best choice for an agave in the UK, and they grow pretty quickly. So after a couple of years, these will be something like that there, and once they get to a couple foot across, they look absolutely amazing. They almost look artificial plants really, they're fantastic. Moving further across, I've got my pine. Now, a pine isn't a plant that I'd have in a smaller tropical garden because I think it would dominate it a lot. But here, I think with the feather palms, it works. And it isn't just any pine, that's Pinus patula, which is a Mexican weeping pine. And you can already see it starting to get these sort of really long needles. I think they look absolutely amazing when they get bigger. And to really help add to that tropical effect, or the exotic effect of that, I've got another euphorbia there, the John Phillips, and at the back, more phormiums. There, I've got an arbutus, which is a hybrid strawberry tree, which again, that can grow really big, but I'll put it in a spot where hopefully it can do its thing and really grow out towards me. And at the back there, another phormium. So I know phormiums are quite common, but they're really tough. And personally, I think for a spot like that, where it doesn't need to have a lot of water, it's not going to get a lot of water, it's got a lot of exposure, it's going to be a great backdrop to the Jubutia palm, and also it'll help shield some of these other plants from those winter winds. Looking back at the opposite side, two of my favourite bamboos. These are both Phylostachys, and that means they're running bamboos, so I'm definitely going to need to dig in a barrier or at least control them. And as you can see, they've got a really weird zigzagging up the culms, which looks absolutely fantastic. They're definitely not going to get quite as big as the big vivaxes, but they'll still size up and they'll still get to around 6 metres tall. And there's two varieties here, on the left and on the right. The one on the left is Spectabilis, which has got these green lines up the culms, so it's Phylostachys aurea sulcata Spectabilis. And on the right hand side, I've got the aureocolis version of that. So you can see very sort of similar colouring, but it's more yellow. And with this bright sun, they go a lovely red colour. So to really sort of accentuate the look of these bamboos, which are more of a screening really for that garage next door, as they grow taller, I'm going to strip all the leaves, all the little side shoots off them, so you can really see those yellow canes. And personally, I don't think there's a better bamboo you can grow here that will get people coming into the garden and just saying, wow, what is that? To pair with that, I've got another Tetrapanax, which Was a bit of a last minute sort of thought there. In reality, I might not plant it there again, but it's doing its thing now. And here I've got a couple more interesting bamboos. So this one is the parvifolia, which doesn't look a lot now. It needs the weeds clearing off the floor, but that has the potential to be an absolutely massive bamboo, and one that will take a lot of cold as well. And there is another vivax, but this one is Huangwenzu inversa. And the amazing thing about this is the fact that it alternates. So you get green for one section, yellow for the next, then back to green again. It really is a crazy looking thing. And when they're sized up, they look absolutely incredible. But anyway, that's about where we're at now. The fire pit area is the other side of there, and to be honest with you, at the minute it's more of a national collection of weeds, which I'm proud to own. So that's my project for later in the year or next year. But straight in front of you there, the elephant in the room, the biggest palm I've got is the Jubutia, and that will be getting planted in the next few weeks. And rather than digging a hole for it and trying to manoeuvre it in, it does weigh around half a ton. I'm going to be basically pushing it back and planting the or moving the earth around it. So it's going to be in a raised area, which will be great for drainage, great for faster growth. And at the right hand side of it there, my other volcano, which is an absolute beauty, stunning palm. I'm not sure exactly what plants are going to have in this side of it, but more arid plants like this yucca, that's linearis or linearifolia, which looks absolutely perfect. It's pristine. Again, really good drainage. But these are all plants at this end here that can take a lot of exposure. So when it's winter, this is the coldest part of the garden. It also has the most wind. Well, that is until my eucalyptus trees at the far end actually start growing. But these are plants that I don't need to give a lot of care for, and they could take pretty much the worst of the weather that the UK can chuck at it. So the other plan for this bit here, on this sort of bank, rather than having a wall around these palms, was to actually use some of these rocks and have it as like a sort of cliff face. I've got a lot of smaller matching rocks to put around them. So that's what I'm pondering at the minute. And also what I'm going to cover this grass with. I've had a few different ideas, but it's something I need to mull over and potentially see what my budget can definitely stretch to. So that was a bit of a longer video than I expected, but I hope you've enjoyed it. And for those of you who wondering where Max was, he was kept inside during the video because he's such a distraction, but I brought him out now just to say hello. There he is. No, it's not going to perform today. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. And for those of you who want to see just how fast these plants grow, I'll be doing another video in around a month or so, so late August, to celebrate us being here in a year. And you'll be able to see just how fast these tropical plants can grow and how you can create an exotic garden in under a year. It really is incredible. So subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, and you'll see what I've got planned. But thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you all soon.